Hello, everyone. This is Armando Perez-Carreno, and welcome to the Web Talk Show. Today, I'm joined by Saumya. How are you, Saumya?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Saumya is a lead software development engineer at BigScoots, and he is going to help us go into a few rabbit holes into the WordPress and performance space. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, Saumya, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's your history, your background, so that people know who we're talking with today?
Sure. So, hi. My name is Saumya Majumder. So I work as a full-time lead software development engineer at BigScoots. My journey with WordPress started, I think, in my second year of my engineering college. So when I was doing computer science engineering. So at the time of, in my spare time, I used to do a lot of contributions and open source thingy and stuff like that. And that's when I jumped into WordPress, like very early days of WordPress. I'm talking about like maybe V2, V3 or something like that. Wow. Like very, very, very long back, right? So since then, what happened was I just, the thing that I loved about WordPress is because I used to build very large, because as you understand, being an engineer, you have to build a lot of complex things, right? One thing that I loved about WordPress is the extensibility of it, right? Like everything has something to latch on. That's the thing that just blew my mind, because in terms of data structure and algorithms, and even in the when you're architecting any kind of software or anything, just latching on to anything, it's just so hard, right? When you're building something, if you just need to go there, and when it's gonna do its thing, but you just want to add a little bit of things in the middle of that, right? It's insanely hard, right? So since then, I started contributing to to the WordPress. Then have been core contributor to the WordPress. I had many open source plugins that are free still to that, I think, in WordPress community. So that's the engineering part of it. Before joining the BigScoots, I used to work in a multinational company. It's called Tata Consultancy Services. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. So I used to work there as a system engineer, and then I started my own company, and I ran it for quite some time. And I have been with BigScoots behind the scenes since its inception. How can I say, being someone, as a, I just don't getting the word, but as a person that is just kind of guiding them, this is the path that they should take. This
right,
is
consulting type.
Yeah, consulting type, right? So it's I have been with them since the inception, but not in a full-time scope, right? So that happened, and BigScoots grew rapidly. I have seen it grown over year and year. And then at some point, I think in 2020, during the COVID or after the COVID, something like that, I joined BigScoots full-time. And since then, it's been an enjoying and super exciting ride.
Excellent. And it's a great company. From what I've heard from people there, and also from clients and people who recommend them originally to BigScoots, it looks like a nice family environment where people are working together. They're enjoying what they're doing, which is
absolutely.
I don't know, something I don't typically envision in a hosting company.
No, I mean, and that's the thing, right? So I always tell this jokingly internally whenever we do a meeting. I tell this all the time to pretty much everyone in the company is don't think of BigScoots as a hosting company. Right? If you think of it as a hosting company, then you are not seeing the full potential of it, right? BigScoots is a company that is essentially giving you, providing you a service. It's a service and engineering company that, is also supposed to do hosting, if you can think of it that way, right? So you basically get the full spectrum thing, you're taking care of from the, bottom to the top.
I think that is very accurate, because when I started working with BigScoots personally with some of our clients, it's a big mind shift between I'm handling everything for my clients, hosting it somewhere, hosting please, of course, but sort of changing or flipping that mindset into, okay, maybe I can hand some of that over to you because you have such a great team that can manage
Team and integration.
and integrations. Like Cloudflare
Yes.
integrations are fantastic, and we can talk about those.
Yeah,
later
sure.
on as
So,
well.
the way I think I would explain BigScoots to anyone is like again, like as this is going to be like a super nerdy and technical conversation, so I'm being super technical here. So if you look at the OSI model, right, like the network OSI model, so I think you can, if you go to any other company, they would at max handle one or two layer, topmost layer, right?
Yes.
Whereas we handle like from like full vertical integration, right? Because we have our own data center, our own router, our own connections, fiber optic cable connections with Cloudflare, like everything is there, right? And we manage everything. So every step of the OSI layer, we know what's going on, right? So that's like a huge benefit compared to anything else, like because like you can have a company who takes a server from Google or AWS, something like that. So they don't know exactly what's going on. So they are kind of working in the the layer 6, layer 7, but not below that, right? But we can actually go below that.
Yes, and that's exciting, especially for very high performance websites or that have some processes that are different from the norm. That's
Yes.
when, and I've seen this before with other hosting companies. You get to a point where you're talking with support and they're like, yeah, well, this is up to where we sort of, that's their box, and you can't exit out of that box. And here it's a little different. Like you said, you have all the infrastructure all the way down. So tell me a little bit more, now that we're doing rabbit holes, the Cloudflare direct connection, basically, for people who don't talk about fiber optics or anything. What makes that so much better than most other companies that don't have this direct hookup?
Amazing question. But to answer that, I need to take two steps back and kind of explain to the viewers exactly how internet works, like in a very nutshell, right? Like
Sure.
because if they don't understand that and they just jump in the middle, they won't get it, right? So internet, I think, like if I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so if anyone has seen a Harry Potter movie, I think internet is like the truly a magic box, right? So anytime you go and enter like www.example.com, whatever, right? Behind the scenes, a lot of things happen, right? So the first thing is like your system or your browser basically makes a call to the DNS, like the top level DNS, right? So it's like the star, right? Like the dot, right? And then underneath, what is the TLD? So it can be .com, .net, whatever, right? Or if it's like a GTLD, like .co.us, something like that, and it would just keep calling step by step by step until it would get that, like let's say .com. So it'd go to the .com directory, right? And then it would look for, okay, where is example.com here, right? And it would look for example.com. Okay, so what is the IP of example.com? This is like the whole process just to literally retrieve the IP of example. And that's why browsers and system cache this DNS information. And if you Google it, you will see like there are lots of command to flush DNS cache. That's basically this, right? So it's basically telling your system to flush like whatever you have remembered from our previous conversation, just forget about that, right? So to ensure that next time you're going to example.com, the browser knows like example.com is this IP, and it doesn't have to go to the rabbit hole to find, okay, this is the IP of example.com, right?
Right.
So when it gets the IP, right, then it sends first like acknowledgement and like all that happens because now we are doing HTTPS. So the authentication needs to be there, the certification and everything, like it needs to match, and then the handshake will happen and all that will happen, right? And if everything goes well, then it will send a request and it will say, okay, hi, hello, send me the data, right? And it would, let's say, send you the HTML of the page. Like if hoping everything is good, there is no 500 error or anything. So you get like the 200 response code and with the HTML, right? But HTML is just literally like a HTML block, doesn't have anything. It still has all the CSS, JavaScript, fonts and everything. So every single request will go through and then it would just, the request will happen, right? In a perpendicular way, and then all the requests will come through. Then the browser will get everything. It will process separately. Like there's a DOM tree that is just for the HTML. There's a CSS paint tree that is for the CSS. There's a JavaScript DOM tree that is for the JavaScript. Everything executes separately. Then everything smushed together, and then voila, you have the web page, right? So a lot of things happen behind the scenes before you get to see the web page. But to the user, you enter example.com and hit enter, and magically everything opens up. up in front of you with the drop down menu working and everything working. It's a magic, right? So now, in the HTTP 1.0 and 1.1 world, what used to happen is there was like a parallelization, means like you cannot do X more than X amount of requests, like because it was just TCP, right? Like each TCP connection has a limitation, so that's why you used to see a lot of this performance plugin doing concatenation, like you have multiple CSS files, combine them to a single file, because that's like a reduce the number of network requests, right? Same with JavaScript, but that is no longer the case in the HTTP2, HTTP3 world, because it uses UDP, right? So it makes the TCP connection, then underlying that, it just creates a UDP connection that just like makes multiple connections. Okay, just give me, because it doesn't. The problem with TCP and UDP is that TCP is a protocol that is super reliable, right? Like if I send you something and you did not acknowledge it, it would break the whole chain and I would start from the top again. UDP is like, I'm just keep sending you, it's fine. And suddenly it just didn't receive something, it's fine, just tell me, just sending it. It's not that reliable, but it's insanely fast because that kind of handshake is not there, right? So that's basically the nutshell of how like the internet or web pages work, right? Now let's bring back the CDN here, right? So now if you're using Cloudflare CDN, and I'm taking a very simple example. Let's say your images, JavaScript, CSS are hosted on the CDN network, right? And they are cached, okay? What's going to happen is the request comes, right? And so I'm talking the latency here, right? So the first request to the HTTP, so for the HTML page goes to the server, comes back. That will take a long period of time because maybe, again, I'm taking an example here. Maybe you are in Sydney and your server is in US, right? So it literally has to travel under the ocean and you cannot exit beyond the speed of light. That's like literally the theoretical limit, right? So you have to wait. That's why the latency would increase. And then for the static files, if they are in the Cloudflare CDN, right, what's going to happen is then the next request will go, and that in the middle you have the Cloudflare sitting in the middle. It would say, oh, I have this file. No longer this request doesn't have to go to the origin. Hey, here you go. There's the file, right? But now, again, zoom even further and look between the browser and the Cloudflare and the server, right? Now, imagine you are again in Sydney. So you are talking to the Cloudflare data center that is in Sydney, right? But your server is in US, okay? So if your image or CSS or JavaScript is not cached, what would happen is your request, the browser sends a request, it gets intercepted by the Sydney Cloudflare data center, right? And it would look at the system like, oh yeah, I don't have this file. Okay, I need to pull that from the origin, right? And that request would need to go to the US server. And this is, by the way, not going via the internet, it is going via intranet. Okay, so it's like the internal network of Cloudflare.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that is not like bombarded with other traffic and other issues, because this is like Cloudflare servers talking to each other, right? It doesn't have to use the public internet, it's just using internet, right? So it sends the request to the origin gets the file, send it back, and that happens, right? Now imagine this. If your origin is just like in any other data center, right? If you again zoom into that request, like that Sydney data center sending the request to the origin, right? So that server, that request will basically, like if you do a trace route, you will see like it's hopping around multiple different points before it can actually reach to that origin server, and then from the origin server just hops back and come back to the Cloudflare, right? Like the Cloudflare intranet, right? Now, hypothetically imagine if you can just connect the Cloudflare intranet to your server, just like a fiber optic cable, right? So what's going to happen is Sydney says, I don't have the file, and within the intranet, like in the neural intranet of Cloudflare, it will just say, I need the file over the fiber optic cable, like direct fiber optic cable. Okay, I have the access to the server. There is the file. Here you go. Right. Like it's like night and day difference, right? Compared to going over the public internet, right? Because like the request between the Cloudflare servers, that is within their own network, but whichever Cloudflare server has to make the request to the origin, that needs to go via the public internet, right? Because it's not connected to Cloudflare in any way, right? But when you connect it to the Cloudflare, then it's like part of that network, and it's like now talking internally. Like it's like you have a huge amount of bandwidth, it's like talking internally in an insane amount of speed.
So for this is very technical. So for anyone who's curious about this part of it, going a little clearer on the sort of making it lower basic level. Once, imagine if you got all that and you got the request in Sydney, it goes through the Cloudflare internal network very fast, gets to the Cloudflare internal network node in the US, it still would have to go to whoever hosts this server from this point. And even if it's in the US, it still has to go to multiple hops to eventually get to that server through the regular internet that everyone uses. And there's a lot of traffic and it could get delayed for a little bit. And so having a connection, a direct connection to the Cloudflare network in the same building, basically, as a Cloudflare network, makes it so much more efficient and like you have a ton more bandwidth that it could just get that immediately. And for a single request,
no public internet.
It's very fast, but also for purging caches, right? So maybe you have a huge site and you already have, and you might want to explain this as well, but when a site is already all cached, requests to it are impressively fast, milliseconds, right? You get the page and you're like, whoa, how is this so fast? It's because everything is already cached around the world. But what happens when that site needs to say, hey, I've updated my content, I want to purge everything, here's everything new, that would take a longer time because it has to go over the internet to Cloudflare versus having that direct pipe where you could just like suck everything in.
Absolutely.
Right?
So there are 2 points. The purge speed itself has nothing to do with this connection, right? Like whether you have this connection or not, your port speed will be exactly the same. And Cloudflare, I think recently, Alex and his team has recently released like a huge update, and they are like rolling it out in the Q1 of 2025. That is basically going to speed up the cache purging even further for everyone, all the users. So the cache purging speed is the same for everyone.
Purging, yes, of course.
Yeah, the purging part of it, right? Once it's purged, right, then it comes like now nothing is in the cache, so every request has to go through the origin, right? So that part, it would become like super speedy because like now it's like part of that connection. So it's just like, oh yeah, there you go, this is the file, and it's like boom, you have the file. But otherwise it would like, like the Cloudflare data center would, let's say, make a call to its ISP, that ISP will make a call to AT&T will make a call to someone else, and then it's just a hopping like that until it reaches that server and hop back. And then this is like the public internet, so there's like BGP protocol, congestion, a lot of things are involved, right? And that's why I think Cloudflare has a nifty tool called Argo. I don't know if you have used it or not.
Argo. Yeah,
it's a very nifty tool, but a lot of people make a very big mistake with Argo, thinking that it would actually speed up your like the speed of the website delivery. It's not entirely true. Argo works between the server and the edge, not the edge and the user. So the edge and so there are 3 points. Imagine 3 dots, right? The user, Cloudflare edge, and the origin server, right? Argo specifically works between the origin server and the edge, okay? Not the edge and the users. The edge and the user is normal as it is. With Argo, what happens is, as I have said, right, there is like BGP, network congestion, and all of that. These are ancient protocols that were created back in the 60s, 70s, like we are still using, and it just works, like magically works. No one want to touch it, So yeah, so what it does is basically Cloudflare has its own neural AI network. What it does, it just monitors all the traffic, and what it does is, if I have to make a request from, let's say, this edge to some point, right? Instead of like using the normal path, that is the shortest path that we call in the networking engineering, like take the shortest path, right? But shortest path is not always the fastest path, for any case, even in the traffic, right? So what it does is, as it knows about the entire traffic scenario, it will take the fastest path, not the shortest path. So it has like it will look at all the path and say, oh yeah, this path does not have encryption in between this leg, so I'm not going to use this path. I would rather use this path, which is like a bit longer, but it is faster because there's less congestion here. So yeah, that's like
that makes sense. Okay, so it's intelligently choosing the path
Yes.
based on
Yeah.
multiple variables, the same way
Yes.
Google Maps might have a shorter path to somewhere, but you know
Exactly
there
like
are
Google
20
Maps.
stop signs
Yes.
and you will never
Yeah.
get there, right? Okay.
Yes. Exactly like Google Maps. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. And it works. I mean, well, we've used it
Yeah.
for years and it's
Yeah.
very nice.
Yes, it's really nice. Yes.
And so for people who don't know a lot about this part of it, content delivery network, you mentioned CDN earlier. So if you don't have a content delivery network, and many sites have, if you have a business, it's very likely that whoever built your site installed a content delivery network or set it up for you. But still, there are a lot of websites that don't. And so a lot of hosting providers are now sort of including it as part of their offering because of that same thing. And what a content delivery network does, in basic summary, is, as Saumya was saying, you have your files, your CSS, your HTML, your JavaScript files, etc. Instead of them being on your server, which would mean everyone from around the world is hitting your server and asking for those files. So that's a lot of requests to handle and also a lot of bandwidth to send out. So a content delivery stands sort of in the middle. And so when someone wants something like a CSS file, they see, oh, I don't have it, gets it from your origin. And then if it has it, then everyone else who asks for that same file will just get it from here. And Cloudflare takes it further with the edge because now there are points of presence all around the world. And so I'll get it from Sydney if I'm in Sydney, or I'll get it from somewhere else, right? So that's
partially right.
partially right.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's more complexity and technicality to it. So I think I didn't mention one part in that you mentioned in the last comment that you made. So the speed of the website that you said, I click and it opens, right? So the BigScoots cache is doing a lot of things behind the scene. It's not just the CDN, but yeah, I mean, CDN is a big part of it, right? So I think we were one of the pioneers, one of the first movers into this space to utilize Cloudflare Enterprise into the hosting. And not only that, even like I was at this point till now, I was just talking about caching the static files, right? And till this point, I think you would clearly remember because you have been in this industry for a long time as well. Like I think before I created this, and I can say that I created this because I was literally I created it. Before that point, it was all like disk caching. Like if you look at any other caching plugin, I'm not going to take any name publicly here. Everyone is just going to provide you some sort of a disk caching. Okay. Now it is very clear. Now when we are talking about page caching, it is very important to understand the differences between what is a disk caching, server caching, and whatnot, right? So again, imagine a request comes, it lands onto your origin, right? Now, after it lands onto your origin, there are a couple of paths it can take, right? Path one is you do not have any cache, right? So the server spins up, the entire WordPress process executes, all the PHP, all the database calls, everything happens to make everything, to build the HTML that is basically supposed to be sent, right? And there is a time involved, by the way, keep in mind, right? Like it would take time to process the PHPs, the database queries, and depending on how crowded your server is, how fast your server, there are lots of variables, right? It would take time, then it would create the HTML, it would send that to the user, right? Now came the server level caching or memory level caching. Like I think you will pretty much remember Varnish or things like that, right? Like in the back in the days, right? What they used to do is they used to cache this HTMLs at literally the RAM, inside the RAM of the of the server, so that when the request comes pretty fast to fetch that, oh yeah, I have the HTML for this page, here you go, take it, right? But as websites got some more complicated, more things, it didn't clear cache all the time, lots of complexities happens. That's where this disk caching plugins came into play, right? And what they used to do is the same thing. The WordPress generates the HTML. It would create a copy of that HTML locally inside the disk, and that would send. The problem with this approach was, when the request was coming, right, it has to come all the way from Sydney to US, the server. And then the server will say, okay, I have the HTML page. So I am basically just cutting a part of the entire chain, right? Like if you look at, it would take, let's say 500 milliseconds to complete the process, then I'm maybe just cutting down 1/4 or 2/4 of it. But there's still more to be cutting down because the request has to travel through this entire journey, right?
Right.
So that's when I think me and Salvador, we created a plugin, like, and this is like, I'm talking about like the bleeding edge, right? Like at I'm talking about the time when CDN level page caching was like a science fiction, like it didn't exist. Okay. So we created a plugin called Super Page Cache for Cloudflare. Okay. Which then later got acquired by Optimal. Okay. So the guys at Optimal, right? So we basically then we took Cloudflare, we did a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes to not, because at this point, remember, everyone was using Cloudflare for the static files, the CSS, JavaScript, images, same, right? We said, why not the HTML, right? Like, we should do the HTML as well. Instead of caching the HTML at the server, let's cache it in the CDN. The benefit of that is when it's cached at CDN and you make a request, for example, .com, the request is intercepted by the CDN Cloudflare edge, and the request comes and says, oh yeah, I have this page HTML, there you go. And that's like 30 milliseconds, right, compared to like 700, 800 milliseconds, right? And then the browser is like, let's say, like looking at the HTML and look, oh, I need the CSS, JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. And the request is again intercepted by that same edge and say, oh yeah, I have the CSS, JavaScript as well. There you go. Again, 30, 40 milliseconds. So the overall experience is like massively different. And we open source the project in the WordPress repository, right? And from there on, a lot of hosting companies kind of took it up, and then kind of as part of GPL licensing, they kind of created their own flavor of it, and then they started creating the the CDN level page caching. But that's where the origin of CDN level page caching, where it all started actually, So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. But yeah, as I was talking to you about before, that in BigScoots Cache, it's not just that. We do even more. Like there are more stuff to it, right? To make things even faster, which we will go into later on in much detail when we talk about that. But just saying, like, there's just like, it's just a part of the equation. It's like imagine like a huge equation, and it's just like a part of it, right? Like
even if it's a small part, it makes so much difference.
It's a big part, but it's not.
But I mean, if it's a part of it, there's still so much more.
Yes.
And yet, just that part makes a huge difference.
All the time, every time, because the request from traveling from Sydney to US, we are cutting that down. That's like huge. Like now I was giving like a extreme example, Sydney, US. Even if you think inside US, right? So let's say your server is in Chicago and you are in, let's say, San Francisco or in the Bay Area, right? Even within the country, that's like literally going from like the opposite side of the country, right? If you can cut that off, that could become like, which could be like 300 ms, 200 ms, would come down to like 20 ms, 30 ms, something like that. The latency, which is like I don't know, like crazy.
No, it's a different level of skill. We actually had that with a client of ours. This particular client had a problem. Let's call it a problem. That their site, because of the complexity of the site, and all it had and all it needed, took some time to render. And we can, and I would really love just to do a deep dive after this on how the WordPress load process works, right? But this site in particular had, for our standards, subpar performance in page generation time. And so that would mean all the plugins are loaded and all the everything that it needs, database calls, etc., to create the page. And so if you would just visit it without it having cached anything, it would take like 2 seconds or something, which is a lot for a user. And so what we ended up doing, because it wasn't BigScoots, we had a little process that we could actually host in the server, thanks to your team, that it would go and generate or fill the cache, right? It would go through all of the pages once, very fast, and generate the cache for all of them, basically visit them and have that put into the cache. And so after that, so you would see, because we have a Python script, and you would see the first load was like 3,000 milliseconds, 2,000, 3,000, etc. But then if you ran it again, it was like
It's like
30
super fast.
milliseconds.
Yeah, yeah,
30
yeah.
milliseconds.
But it's a very, very fun thing that I would like to add here, because you wrote the script and you should know this. This is like a very fun part of like a deep dive of how Cloudflare caching works, right? So now I'm talking about Cloudflare, right? Like literally zooming into just the Cloudflare caching, right? So what happens is like a request comes to Cloudflare, right? And Cloudflare sees like, okay, do I have it or not, right? If it doesn't have it, it makes a request to the origin, get the file, right? Now, Cloudflare has what it calls like two states of caching. One, it's called transient caching, and another is like much more permanent caching, right? So the transient caching is basically, you can think of it like being in a RAM, or like a place where we are not sure how like popular this is, right? Because like think of it from Cloudflare standpoint, right? Okay, so Cloudflare, they're running a business. They have a free plan, right? They don't, for the free pro, for anyone, they don't limit you on the bandwidth. I mean, there is a hypothetical limitation, but it's not not on the paper, right?
Right.
So, but what I'm saying is, so what happens is, if Cloudflare starts caching everything for a very long period of time, they are also have to pay for the SSDs, the NVMs, and they are expensive, right? So they have a very smart system. What they do is they get a request makes to the origin, get the data, keep it in the transient cache, and keep a very close eye to it, right? Like, how often does this get requested? Right? Like, how often it is getting requested, right? If it is getting requested often for a period of time, like, again, all of this are like Google, so I'm not will be able to give you the numbers, like X number, because these are all, you can understand, right? These are all redacted items. So I mean, like, these are all like closely guarded secrets, right? So if that threshold passes, then it gets moved over to the persistent caching, where it would stay in the cache for a longer period of time. So that's why you might see, like, okay, you know what, you run a script to, like, go to the sitemap of the page and use, like make a request to every single one of them. And then what's going to happen is you just and hopefully, let's say hypothetically, no actual user visited the page, right? Next day you go, there is no cache, because they have removed everything. They saw like one request came. Yeah, and there's no further interactions to it, so just remove it from the cache, free up the space for actual stuff, like other items to be put in the cache, right? So that is one part of it. The another part of it is, you can think of, so you said, like, the Cloudflare has the highest number of edges, or the pop locations, as we like to call it, all across the world, right? But it's not all the same, okay? They are divided into 3 tiers, okay? So tier 1 are like the big boss, then tier 2, and then tier 3. Or you can think of it like the tier 1, tier 2, and the regional tier, okay? So again, if I give you an example, let's say, let's take example of India, right? So in India, they have around, I think, 7 or 8 or 10 edge locations, right? Now, what's going to happen is, obviously, they are not, like, not all of them are hosted in the same kind of data center, right? Like let's say some would be hosted in data centers insanely powerful, where others are supposed to be the regional one, but not like the like the top one, right? So that's why you would see, like, in the Mumbai data center, that is in Bombay, Mumbai, right? That's like, in case of Cloudflare, that's like, the middle tier data center, or the, like, if you're talking about that India itself, that's the tier 1, right? But in global, it's like the tier 2, and then the tier 1 would be like some only like let's say in Chicago, someplace in Europe, and like these are like the very, very, very big data centers, right? Like, these are the tier 1. So the way things supposed to work is, if tier 3, and this will happen if you have enabled tiered caching. This is a thing that you can enable inside your Cloudflare dashboard. Like, if you go inside caching, there's a thing called tiered caching, right? If you turn that on, what's going to happen is, so let's say if you make a request from a regional tier, right? And regional tier does not have that item in cache. Instead of making a call to the origin, it does not have the privilege to do that. It doesn't even have the authority to do that. It would make a call to tier 2. Hey, do you have that? Okay, tier 2 will look into it and say, no, I don't. It will then make a call to tier 1. Hey, do you have that? Tier 1 will say, yeah, I do. So tier 1 will send back to tier 2. Tier 2 will make a copy of it and send back to tier 3. Tier 3 will make a copy of it. And then if in the whole chain, none of them has the item in cache, then only tier 1 has the authority to make a call to origin. This is to reduce the call to origin, like, to make sure that the origin is not over requested, right? So tier 1 will make a request, it will get it cached, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to clear this thing out because, as you just talk about the script, I know many people who are listening to this might even think about writing a script like that, and keep this in mind. And also Cloudflare has another ML neural engine that looks at the requests that are coming from. If they see that the requests that are coming from are robotic, like bots, right? So they by default put a very low cache time to it. Sometimes they won't even cache. Like, let's say, for example, if you're using a Python script, right? If you didn't change the user agent of the Python script, it would send like Python dash request slash 2.1.1 or something like that, like as a default user agent, right? And it would know like it's just using like a script, right? And it would just like cache it for a very low period of time, or may not even cache it. So just keep these things in mind.
Yeah, and that's very important, because in this case, for example, it worked great because we didn't need the persistent cache, right? So it's fine if it moves it down to, it didn't need the transient cache. It's fine if it moved it to persistent.
It's fine, because you are doing it daily.
You're doing daily overview. And so it was great because now, most of the time, whenever you visit the site, it's always extremely fast. And that's great. And so nobody really sees those really slow times. Eventually, it was made better. But that was sort of a quick sort of patch approach to have users see the site faster. And then, and this is something I want to talk about later, obviously, once people log in, it's a whole different world, because now we have to hit the origin. And that's something I would want to talk about as well. So I don't know if we should go into that first or the WordPress flow, but
it's up to you.
I think let's just to explain to people what happens in a WordPress starter flow. I think we should do that just so that I think a lot of people don't understand, and I for a very long time didn't understand that until I went into the actual file structure. What really happens behind the scenes after everything you explained? Somebody visits a site, all the DNS happens, etc. They get the HTML file, but before that HTML file exists, if you're on WordPress, what
the WordPress
really
lifecycle
happens? Yes,
the WordPress lifecycle. Yeah, so that's a very, very amazing question. So WordPress is a very easy to use and at the same point in time super complex. I think one of the most complex CMS system in the world. Like if you literally dig into the code of the core WordPress, right? So what happens is when the request comes and the server spins up, right? And it whenever if you have set up WordPress ever, this is either htaccess or nginx file to kind of say what kind of permitting structure it would be. That's telling the server. So first of all, again, I'm just explaining it in a more technical way. If you have ever set up a WordPress site in a cPanel server, just take any shared server and just set it up, you would see inside the htaccess file, it adds a few lines of code, right?
Right.
What that means is WordPress, hit example.com/hello world or cake recipe or something like that, but WordPress does not understand any of that. It just doesn't. That's an encapsulation, just an eyewash. It doesn't exist, right? If you look at that code, what it's saying is it's just saying https example.com index.html index.php some post ID that would pass to WordPress. WordPress then kind of tell what kind of permanent structure it would be. So it's just all working based on the post ID. But now let's talk about how WordPress works, right? You hit a request to the server. The first thing that happens is wp-config.php. This is the first file that gets executed, because this is where all the constants are based on which everything will spin up, right? This is where your database is. All the salts are auth salt, login salt, everything is there, right? And at the very end of it, you would just say oh, don't touch it any further. There's a line like that, and pointing and from that one, just pointing to the initiator of WordPress file, the initiator PHP file, and that file then take all those constants and then make a connection to the database, do all of those things. Because remember, even for WordPress is a stateless, HTTP is a stateless system. There is no state exists. So this is happening for every single request that you sent, right? So it's not like that, okay, I just sent a request, it remembers like, oh, this is the server that I need to connect to, this is the database that it doesn't know that. It's like the request ended and it forgot everything, right? And everything starts from scratch again, right? So again, it just gets all the constant, like, okay, this is the database, this is the database host, this is the database username, password, this is the, the collection of the database, like how everything is encoded and everything, right? And when it get all that data in WP config, then the initiator comes in, then the initiator kicks in, then it first starts making all the database connection and everything so that we have the plate ready to handle the request, right? And then when the requests came, right, again, example.com/hello world, but behind the scene it's basically index.php (p equals to, let's say, post ID 123, right? And then what happens is behind the scene that 123 makes a call like, okay, go to the post table, give me the data of the post table, make a call to the post meta, give me the post meta data, give me the term meta, what in which term it is, like in all those join SQL queries, like everything is happening, right? It's just pulling everything, which category is it, is there any common, and based on how you design the template, right? And then everything happens, everything created up, like all the structures are defined. Then below that, it's like starts making, like looking in your code, like inside your code, if you have created any kind of, let's say, custom PHP code to make a call request, like something like that, that gets executed. All this PHP, there are actions, there are filters, hooks, they get executed, Then if you have any kind of MU plugins, that is the must-use plugin, they get executed even before any plugin kicks in. So they have a precedence over the plugins, right? So the WordPress core, theme, MU plugins, then plugins, right? So it's like one after the other, right? So that's why they're called MU plugins, because they have the more precedence over the general plugin, right? Mm-hmm. And you can't just deactivate it. You literally have to either rename the file or remove the file, right? So and then all of this is happening, right? And remember that behind the scene, there can be WordPress core itself could be using other hooks, like init hooks and other hooks to talk to different parts of the WordPress, adding different things, sanitization of your content, right? Like, getting the data from the database, then sanitize everything, making sure there's no excess vulnerability or not any dirty JavaScript or anything like that. All that is happening, right? Then the plugin kicks in, and then the plugin puts its load onto the site, right? Then those enqueue of CSS and JavaScript happens, right? And then their code execution happens, and all of things that they have asked WordPress to do, that happens, right? And the very end of the chain, right, whether or not that plugin is being used or not, irrelevant, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the chain of when all of this execution happens, and then your system flows through that, like, oh, it is using this, and it's using this block, or it's using this particular system, and that, and I need to enqueue this and this, and this template I need to use. Like, for example, you could use this particular template for that page, so it needs to know that, right? There's like a separate file for that, like which particular template needs to be used, and all of this happens, right? And then the very end of the structure, it calls a shutdown hook, which is a very known common hook. Shutdown hook means like, okay, I'm done, I'm sending everything to the client, and so it's basically sent to the user, and that's basically it. And remember, I'm just talking about the WordPress HTML. There's like the REST API as well. Like behind the scenes, the plugin could be creating REST APIs, right? So the admin.php, that's like another part of thing. wp-cron.php, that's like a whole another lot of things. But like this is like basically the flow. Like it's like not just one flow. Like it just breaks down into like this. Like if it is a cron, if it is an Ajax, if it is a REST, if it is a HTML, then like follow the path. Like that way.
So this is an excellent way of explaining it. There's so much going on here. And at the very, very beginning, you said you love WordPress because of the extensibility of it, right? You mentioned hooks. So for everyone who doesn't know, don't modify WordPress, right? So if you're working with WordPress and there's something you need to do at a certain point, there's a ton of actions and hooks that run. And you can just use the do action or the add filter, right? You could use these to allow yourself to put your code in that part so that it runs without modifying core. And so you're not affected by updates, etc., right?
Yeah, and if any aspiring engineer, any aspiring person who is looking into this, like advanced person looking into this, and they want to up their game, I would tell them in your free time, just study the WordPress core code. Just open it up in VS Code and just look through the files. They have amazing documentation for every single thing. The reason behind that is, so for example, you want to do something somewhere, right? And there is no Stack Overflow or any kind of example of that, right? But if you look at the WordPress core, you might find there is an action or a filter that is nowhere documented, or nobody used it before, or nobody mentioned it anywhere on the internet, but it's there. And you can just use that, So just read the code. Yeah.
That is an excellent suggestion. Just read the code. Sam, I'm going to have to quote you on that. I recently we had to do something like that and this was a plugin. So plugin developers, if they're a good company, they will have hooks as well. They'll have actions inside their code that you can use. And most of the time it's because other people asked for them in support and eventually they added them. And in those scenarios, more specifically, there's typically no documentation because they just added it for convenience for that other user. Yeah. And so recently we had that example where we needed to add a listing of users that are inside a group, inside LearnDash, for their Groups Plus supervisor portal thing. That is very obscure. I don't think many people use it, but it's there. And so there's no documentation on that specific hook, but we just looked at the code, searched for hooks to see if there was somewhere we could hook into before reaching out to them and asking them. And there it was. There was one there, right exactly where we needed it, tested it, everything works. And so we don't have to modify their plugin, which would then break after updates, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So definitely, that's a great suggestion. Look at the code and see what's there. And by the way, recently I stumbled upon the Learn WordPress site. You know how they redid it, and it's very nice, very easy to use. And you can learn a lot about WordPress, but there's a specific part of it that actually teaches you the whole life cycle, what each file does and what it has and everything. And so if you're curious, you can go in there and just learn that way as well. And then you can obviously, like Saumya said, just jump into the code itself. And now with GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT, etc., if you have that code, you have access to the code always. Yeah. You can ask it things. If you don't understand something, ask it, reference the code, and you can get a better idea of what's going on if that specific part is not documented.
Yeah, even I would take it even one step further. Like even this LLMs like give you any kind of hooks or something. I generally don't take them on their face value, So what I instead like people to do is like, okay, you have a hook. No, that's great. Open up the core code, paste it in the search, look at that. And the reason behind that is, so let's say you are building a plugin, right? Like I do that, or like I have to build a lot of internal plugins, right? At BigScoots. So I have to maintain, I need to make sure that my plugins that we are building, they can be used till WordPress 5.7 and with PHP 7.4, right? So let's say the LLM said, oh, you can use this arguments with this, right? And when I open up the core documentation is amazing inside the code. It would literally say this particular argument was added in version this, right? So like, okay, if I'm going to use this, it's not going to work below this, right? Or this particular hook itself was added in this version. So you can't rely on that. So there are lots of things like that. So it's fine to do like a little bit of soul digging, but I would still won't put my money on it. So I would rather do my own research. Yeah.
That's excellent advice. And so for everyone who's trying to use an LLM, whichever one you want, ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever. Yeah. They're nice, but they hallucinate, especially with code. They hallucinate a lot. And hallucinate means it will make things up for its own benefit. And so it'll give you an excellent explanation. You have to use this hook that uses it. These are the parameters. But if you do your research, like Saumya said, you'll realize, hopefully you didn't actually implement it with a big error. It's better to just go into the code and look at it. You'll realize that maybe the parameters are incorrect. Maybe the hook doesn't even exist. Or maybe, and that was excellent advice, maybe it's not supported up to certain version where it was added. And then maybe in that case, you have to have two scenarios and look at what was used before and use that and what was used after. And then you could have in your own code, like a pre 3.0, 3, and then that way you sort of protect yourself against.
I mean, maybe you are working on a client side who cannot upgrade beyond 5 point, let's say 9 or something like that. Let's hypothetical example,
Right.
Because they are using some system that will break if they upgrade, right? And you write that code thinking it will work, and boom, you get fatal error because it just doesn't there, right? So I mean, it's always good to do your research, dig into the rabbit hole as much as you can before writing the code.
Yeah, what I like to do is if I'm chatting with an LLM and having it assist with part of the coding, it's if it gives me something, I'll look for it, like you said, in the documentation, in the code. And then if I want it to give me a better response, I'll grab the actual original code where it's referenced and the documentation and give it to it. And in that way, it will understand what those parameters are. And this is helpful for someone who is not a software engineer, perhaps, right? So if you're a software engineer, you can read the code. You're like, yeah, sure, of course, yeah, let's do this. But if you're not, and you don't have that background, it might look like something very daunting. And so at least protect yourself by giving it the actual code and documentation.
Actual code,
so that it could give. It's very good at coding, and people say, it could better than a lot of developers. Not true, in my opinion. I think it's like helpful but lazy. And so it's like it'll help you, but it doesn't do its research, right? And so I don't know. What do you think?
No, I mean, I have been in this industry for I think more than a decade now, right? Like I've been doing engineering, like I don't know, so long. I don't think that AI, I don't think coding itself is the hardest part, right? Like I'm pretty sure AI can take over the coding. I mean, not a big deal, right? The hardest part is, again, I say this to myself every single time when I'm working it. Think twice, code once, right? The brainstorming part, that's the hardest part, right? So let me give you an example, right? So let's say you are creating a plugin, right? Let's hypothetically say you are creating a plugin. Now, inside that plugin, you need to create, let's say, a custom database table, hypothetically, okay? Now, if you give that to some kind of a LLM or look at anywhere or whatever, right, you might be more inclined towards using the init hook, right? So because init is a hook that gets executed every single time a request comes, right? So like on every request, it just gets executed. So you might be inclined to do that, right? But then like that's not something like a seasoned software engineer will do, because that's like, yeah, sure, the AI can do that, but you need to think long term. Like for example, the plugins that we create, that's being used on like insanely large sites. I don't even have words. They have so much traffic, right? Every nanoseconds matter. I'm not talking about milliseconds. I'm talking about nanoseconds, right? So, like if I can shave off 50 nanoseconds, right? Those enterprise sites are gonna have huge effect, right? And cascading effect, multiplying effect, right? So, and that's where a software engineer will say, why wouldn't I use register the plugin activation hook, because that's gonna just happen once, when I activate the plugin and boom, not gonna execute ever again, right? So when you take a long-term approach, okay, it's fine. The code is not the problem. What is there's a thing called code complexity, the time complexity of a code, right? You can Google it up, right? So it's O log n, there's a mathematical complexity formula, what is the time taken by your, if you're writing an algorithm, what time does your algorithm takes to solve the problem as it gets more and more and more data fed into it, right? So it might start here, but as it scales up, where that times goes, right? So when you think of this, what is the time complexity of this particular algorithm that you wrote, or the code that you wrote, what is the most performant way of solving this, then things starts to change. You would see that this LLMs, they might be giving you the right answer. And again, I told you, right, in the beginning, if you want to reach from point A to point B, there are 100 different paths to reach, So I'm not saying that they are giving you wrong answer. What I'm telling you is that might not be the most performant way of doing it. You know, so as I was talking about, right? So most of the plugin devs, and again, I mean, I don't know, might be their thought process or whatever. I have seen this that most of the WordPress plugin devs or theme devs, in that matter, don't give performance like a real priority. You know, they would give it a priority to pass their demo theme or whatever, but not itself, you know, like not in itself. Like I can like take an example, like I can vouch for a couple of plugins, right? Like and when I generally don't vouch for any plugins, but I can vouch for a couple, like let's take example of NovoShare, right? That are built by the Brian and Brett, the brothers, you know, the NovoShare, Perfmatters, you know. So these guys, I don't know if you have ever used these plugins,
Yes.
right? So these guys are like me, like insanely OCD on performance, right? Like I have seen them changing their class name inside their code from, let's say, NovoShare to NS because it shaved, like, I think 2 or 3 kb of CSS file size, you know. So yeah, I mean they are like that. And when I look at their code, I see every single thing has a check. You know, are we doing this? Are we doing this? You know, do not execute a single line of unnecessary code. Like, just don't. You know. So I know that, and same thing, like when it comes to themes, say for example, like GeneratePress, right? Like I can wholeheartedly say, like it's an amazing theme, super lightweight, super performant, because they thought of performance as a key. You know, like you can add your own CSS, make things spicier and whatever, but the theme itself is super amazing. And the benefit of that is, like, let's say you want one landing page to be super spicy, so you can create like a very little one-line code to add that CSS just on that page only, right, not on the entire site, right? So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. So I think that's where the AI and LLM stands in my view. Like, yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like again, coding is not a big deal. Like there are lots of tools, even automation tools nowadays that even don't even need coding, right? Like you just add node visually, like you just add from here to here, then an if block, then a switch block, whatever, and then you do, and then just process the request, right? But the key is creating the algorithm, right? Like knowing the data structure, and then understanding the time complexity of what is the fastest way and most scalable way of achieving it. So again, like the code is not the problem. Again, like people look at code. Oh my God. The thing is, when you look at, people should look at their code and look at the WordPress core code, right? Like something similar, let's say, and ask themselves, why are they doing it this way versus I am doing it this way? You know, both does the exact same thing, let's say, like making an HTTP request to some external endpoint, but they are doing it some way and I am doing it some way. Now, why? I'm not saying it necessarily for the performance. It could be performance, it could be scalability, it could be backward compatibility, but knowing the why, that's the most important thing.
That is very good, because you might look at it and see, whoa, for this particular request flow, why are they using classes and I'm not? Why are they having multiple files and I have everything in a huge file? Why do they have hooks? What are those for, right? And all this, if you look at an established, mature software, you're going to see that they've made these decisions along the way based on experience. And it was probably not like that at the very beginning.
But and also keep in mind that in that project, there are like multiple people contributing to that. It's like in that project, maybe you just doing that. So you have like one large file, you know every single thing where it is, like in the back of your hand. But when like thousands of people are contributing to it, it's not that easy.
Yeah. And you brought up Perfmatters. Great tool, by the way, if people have not used it. Perfmatters allows you to build help you put more performance into your website by many different things, right? It has a bunch of little settings that will make it more performant. Maybe if you use your script editor, it will allow you to actually disable scripts and CSS of certain plugins for certain parts of the site on parts that you're sure that they're not going to be used. And then they also have things like You can reduce the number of revisions, right? In some cases, it makes sense. And you can have it defer JavaScript or delay JavaScript. So things that will help you with your Google LCP, right? And it's great. They do have a very nice feature that I really just learned about recently. I like the script editor very much, but again, the script editor allows you to sort of hide, I don't remember that's the exact name, but it allows you to disable certain JavaScript or CSS files from certain pages. Great. But I was thinking, and I think I mentioned it on the last podcast as well, what if I want to disable a plugin completely from running on specific pages? And there might be this plugin that is just very resource heavy. And if you put it on the side, automatically every single page load, precisely by what you were talking about before, maybe it's running its code very early. It just makes everything slower. You disable it and it's faster, right? And so, but I do need the plugin. So what can I do to disable that specific plugin from running on specific pages or all pages except certain pages? So if you run it as an MU mode, if you're on Perfmatters in MU mode, then the script editor allows you to completely disable the plugin from running on pages, right? Have you tested that? Is that a good idea? Or is it better to have code on your site that will, as an MU plugin, that will actually do that disabling for you?
So let me first break down the performance side of a website, right? Like so that we can go into, I will go into the performance, right? So if you look at any website, take any website and you look at performance, then it is basically broken into segments, right? In one segment is like the caching, the speed, the optimization, the image optimization, all this underlying technical things that come into play, right? Like all the underneath things that you just under the hood things that you won't see, right? That's one part of the equation of the entire performance canvas, right? In the other part is basically the page optimization. Okay. Now, in a best case scenario, in a perfectly built website that has been built from the ground up, like imagine like a custom theme that has been built from the ground up with performance in mind, specifically for that website, Perfmatters will not give you any extra benefit. Like even if you enable Perfmatters, like probably one or two features of Perfmatters will like let's say they're lazy loading, or something like that, and like one or two, or like reducing the number of revisions or something like that. But like most, like 98 or 99% of Perfmatters is basically going to be useless for you. Like for that particular website. Right. But we know that we don't live in the perfect world, right? And we don't have perfect websites, right? So that's where Perfmatters come into play. So it does the website optimization. So that is basically happening before the caching and all the optimization things comes into play, right? So what it does is basically it hooks into the WordPress core, allowing you to do a lot of things, like the revision things you said, right? Like the more revisions you have, the larger database that you would have, right? But for most websites, they don't need like unlimited revisions, right? Like they don't, they don't. They might need last 50, 20, it's fine, but they don't need unlimited, right? So it's good, right? A lot of the times there are lots of security features like blocking some RPCs, then like hiding some feeds and some things from the response headers. They're amazing, right? Then there's the CSS JavaScript optimization that you talked about. Those are also great. RU CSS and then JavaScript, all of that is great. And then you talked about the plugins, right? Like some plugins is doing that, right? Now that's why if you like the script editor and the MU mode, we use Perfmatters a lot in our performance packages. So it's like we just use it a lot. Like we know it back of our hand, but we generally don't go into the script editor and MU mode. And I would explain you why. Okay, so what happens is you would understand like you are managing websites on behalf of your clients, right? So your clients tells you, okay, I want to add this or do XYZ, right? And then you do it for them, right? So you know the side at the back of your hand, you know that without your permission, not a single plugin can be installed, activated, or settings can be changed, right? So if something is happening, you know, right? The problem with we using that is, let's say we hypothetically imagine we enable it, right? We set it up, everything works great, and then tomorrow your SEO guy or someone does something and everything just falls apart, right? And then you just don't know where to go. But that's not going to happen with you, because you know, okay, this is falling apart because I have blocked that jQuery in the script editor that I need to enable, right? Because it is centrally managed, right? Compared to every customer, they might install oh, I need this, so let's try out 10 different plugins, right? So that's just not going to happen. Now, coming to the MU mode, now there are two different things. Okay, so I have not used the turn off plugin feature completely, but from my understanding of WordPress lifecycle, and that's what I'm talking about, right? So when we're talking about plugins, right, there are two aspects of it. One aspect is plugin adding front end stuff. So like CSS, JavaScript to every single pages, right? That you can pretty much handle with hooks and stuff. Like, okay, only for this page, or if the page includes this short code or something like that, only then register this hook. Otherwise, just deregister this CSS and JavaScript or whatever. Just dequeue this things, right? So that is part one. The part two is, let's say that plugin is creating database table, making multiple queries, and not just multiple queries. Let's say they're making one query, but it is so unoptimized, like it's like joining 10 different tables, and then x.id is equals to y.id, and then joining, like reverse join, and then outer join, inner join, like doing crazy stuff. So the database has to spend a lot of time, like queuing that up. And remember, I initially said there is no state. So that's like happening for every request that comes to the origin, right? So not the cached one, but the ones that comes to the origin, right? So turning off the plugin, and again, as I said, like if you look at the life cycle, right? WP config starts, then everything happens, develop connections, and then themes, then the MU plugin kicks in, and then at that point in time, right, inside the in MU plugin, there's at least I don't know any kind of native WordPress core hook that would tell WordPress you can deactivate the plugin for sure.
Completely, right.
There's a hook where you pass the path and it would deactivate the plugin. That's I'm talking about literally going to WP admin plugins and deactivate, right? But there is no hook that would say don't execute the code. If you know what I mean, right? Don't execute. I can say in the MU plugin, oh, if this plugin exists, deactivate it. And WordPress will deactivate the plugin. It won't. I don't have the power to remove it. But I can deactivate it, right? But I can't say if page is equals to this, then deactivate it. Otherwise, if page is equals to that, then reactivate it. If I do that, then what if you deactivate, you need to connect, let's take example of Jetpack, right? Every time you deactivate and reactivate, you need to connect to Jetpack. What if it is that kind of a plugin? You deactivate and then you reactivate, it won't just start from there. It might need to reconnect and then start the whole process all over again.
Right, because of there's specific life cycles with the plugins as well, right?
Yes,
there's the activation hook and the activation hook.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Maybe by you doing that, what's happening is it might seem to work, but the problem is it's also running its own activation and deactivation rules.
So it's I don't think there is any particular way that you can say that, okay, just don't run this plugin for this page, only run the plugin for this page. If you need that, then I think the best approach is fork the plugin, take the plugin out, open up in your own core editor, look where the plugin is getting initiated. There's a particular position where it is getting initiated, right? Add your logic there. If page is equals to this, then initiate this, else don't. That is the only way to make sure that this happens. You lose the ability to update the plugin and whatever. But if you are okay with it, because let's say this is a one thing, it's fine. You're not worried about the update that much, right? You can just manage that. Then you can just do that, right? Just go into the plugin, look at the code, and make sure it just only invokes where you want it to be invoked. you know. So
That makes sense.
that way, yeah, so that was like, oh, hopefully there is a class and there's like somewhere to saying new something, like invoking this and then executing this. So just wrap that around if page is equals to this or whatever, if this is this or this or that is that, then
It will.
execute that.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, because you also have to consider things like the API, right, or the WP Ajax, right? So because maybe if you're disabling it the other way, it could happen that it was also supposed to run with the request with the admin Ajax, and
Oh, that's another
that's a
thing
whole
I
other.
hate so much. Admin, I hate it so much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most people still use it, right, instead of using the
Yeah,
REST API.
I remember, back in the WordPress V2, V3 days, admins.php was a thing that was born out of necessity. Back in those days, there was like absolutely no other way for JavaScript to talk to the server. Like it was needed something. Like let's say you click a button and you needed something to happen, like the server to know I clicked the button, right? So you needed like a middleman to do that, right? And admins.php was the only way. But as you can understand, it's a backward compatibility thing. So when you look at the code, if you literally just open the code of admins.php, it runs so many things before executing your request. So the load it puts on your server is enormously high compared to if you switch to REST API. So, for example, if you use BigScoots Cache, I'm pretty sure you use BigScoots Cache, and you would see in a lot of places it does like a very swift animation, like, hey, do you want to do this? Yes, no. Purge cache, it like gives you a tick sign, like all of that. But if you open up the network tab, not a single place it's using admins.php. Not in a single place. Every single call is via REST API. Every single call. Like BigScoots Cache has its own REST API that it was built on. And again, as I said, like the architecture is the key. Like the engineers get paid for their knowledge and the architecture and the design, the DSM, and all of that. That the code is just a byproduct of it. If you don't see the outcome, like at that scale, like you can't do that, right? So that's what I was talking to you about, right? Like if you have REST API was built for this, literally. From like it was a pretty new addition to WordPress, like pretty new, right? So when it was built knowing that okay, this is going to be used, and people can extend it, create their own route, can do like get, patch, put, delete, whatever, and then it does not come with any kind of package, right? So you just extend the WP REST API class. You just create all the different methods, like all the endpoints that you want to do and what you want to do on that endpoint, right? So when the call comes, you just register your endpoint, like let's say www/that this /v1/example, right? And then after that, whatever comes, that particular method is called, and inside that method, whatever you do, you always return JSON inherently because it's like it's just built to return JSON.
Is it? You said it doesn't have any baggage. So running that versus there's no plugin. Well, what plugins do run if you run a REST API request, or do none of them run and you have to automatically or on your own run the tools that you actually need if you need some tooling from plugins?
It's just like if you're using WP REST API, it's just WP config.php creation of the the main like $WPDB, the connecting with the database, like make sure that you have all the global variables set up, and then it looks, oh, this is a REST API request, so like there's a constant that is set for that. Oh, this is a REST API, so go to the REST API class, and then inside that class it looks for the path, like okay, do we have that registered? Like if you go to any site and just randomly put wp-json/something, it would give you a JSON response like no route exists for this, instead of like a 404, it would give you like that because like it doesn't find you that. So it would look for that, okay, I do have this endpoint registered, okay, so I don't care anymore, go there, look at whatever that is doing, go to that endpoint. Inside that endpoint, what is the thing that I'm looking for? Is like, let's say, purge cache. Okay, look into the purge cache, whatever it's doing, do that there. No more baggage. And inside that, if you want to use any of the global variables like $WPDB or something, you can do that. The global variables are still there. But what I'm saying is, if you look at admins.php, just comes with way more inherent baggage. So what I'm saying is, if you convert the exact same thing from adding Ajax to WP REST API, you will see massive performance improvement. And that actually happened. So we gave this recommendation, like WP REST Maker is a plugin that a lot of our customers use, right? And we have an amazing great relationship with them. And I told the team, like, you know what, you guys need to do this. And like let's like the nonce is another useless things, which I hate. Like, it's not useless. It's amazing for logged in user,
Right.
but it is pretty much useless for non-logged in user. Okay. But anyway, so we were talking about this nonce thing, and that's where this entire REST API thing came in. So if you look at WP Recipe Maker, let's say, I think 1 year, 1.5 year old version, today's version, the entire plugin is running on REST API. The entire plugin, every single thing, like adding rating to everything is REST API. There's no more news.php.
Wow. And that,
Yeah.
it still gives you all the functionality, right? So you can still access any function from a plugin if you need it, or do you need to do something different in that case? Because if you're using admin agents,
No, I mean,
everything works the same way.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing here as well, right? Like, you can still call the same function, same method.
Same everything.
Yeah,
It's just
so,
now
yeah,
removing all
now-
the baggage from the load.
Yeah. Now everything is in the REST API, so everything is properly. So if it is like a delete request, so for example, let's say purge OP cache, right? Now think of it like it's a purge request, right? So obviously it's a delete call. Like it's a delete call, right? So like that, right? So you can now design the structure things in a much more structured way, and not only that, now you are opening up. You are building this performance for your own, but at the same point in time, you are getting like buy one, get one offer, because now the entire world can use your REST API to do whatever, right? So like, for example, if you're using BigScoots Cache, you can now integrate the REST API of BigScoots Cache in your own application.
Right.
Think of it that way, right? But we built it for performance, but you now get buy one, get one. You have the entire documentation of REST API. Feel free to use it.
Right. Okay. And also it has the added benefit of you can use it headless as well.
Yeah. So imagine in your Python script, something happened. You want to purge cache for this post ID. How are you going to do that? Now you have REST API. So just make a HTTP call. Boom. Cache is clear.
Yeah, that's true. And now all the block editor is built using the REST API as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. So in the block editor world, I think I would put myself in the hybrid zone. I know there are teams that are like, oh, I hate block editor. They're like full FSC, but I am in the world of the hybrid. I don't personally like the full FSC mode. To be very honest with you, I mean, it's great for normal websites, like basic websites, but when we're building complex websites where, let's say, if the menu would need to look like this, then for this people, if they're coming from this country, then this needs to come, and a lot of complexities there. I would love the hybrid approach. The hybrid approach means is basically like still using the old structure of themes, like having the PHP files and all the logics there, but for the content, use the blocks. All the content is coming from block editor. So we are creating like custom blocks. So you need, let's say, important node block. Like that's like, let's say, asterisk sign. So I would create you like a custom block for that, right? So use that block. So use block for the content, but not for the site design.
Okay.
Because in the site design part, when we're using in some part, like I would still use the themes.json and all of that, right? But that's why I said like the hybrid, right? So I would not fully rely on the block to create everything. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So you would say it's a block theme basically, but you're still using PHP to create the main templates instead of using the full site editing experience to visually design those and get them from the database.
Yes, yeah. PHP is insanely powerful, and you can handle so many complex scenarios inside that. Like imagine a scenario like, okay, if a user is subscribed to this plan, then show this banner on top of it, otherwise won't. If you try to do that on a blog, you would go crazy. But in PHP, it would It's fine. Like you can just create like pretty easy. You might even create like a custom block for that and just put that there. But it's actually all the logics is handled at the PHP level.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and there's going to be at a certain level scale, it's also going to be faster. Right. If you're
Yes,
just reading a
absolutely.
file. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So because like, for example, anyone can like, for example, if you want to add another class to something, finding that block on every single place where it was versus you go to that PHP file, add that class and boom, it's everywhere. It's like night and day difference.
Right. That makes sense. Speaking of PHP, right? PHP, for those who don't know, evolves, and many people just know about PHP because they get warnings like, now it's not going to be supported and you have to go to this version, and then warning, if you go to this version, everything might break, right? So that aside, right, PHP has evolved a lot, right? There's a lot of new features that other languages had that now PHP has. How much of that would you say is used in modern WordPress? Are they using a lot of the new PHP features?
Yes. Here's the thing, right? In the WordPress world, because as I have been a core contributor, so that's why I'm telling you this from the core contributor perspective. It would be amazing to just wish my wand and just make everything modern PHP, but it's just so hard knowing there are large corporations who will still stick to this version or X version of PHP and they are not going to upgrade, right? So the WordPress core team always takes like, slow progression. Like, okay, we're going to deprecate this, then we're going to take it away. Because otherwise, if they just do something and it's going to break everyone, it's just like, oh my God, what have you done? And like, it's an outcry happening all around the world, right? And major website, like imagine what if WordPress releases an update and like whitehouse.gov get just shut down, right? Like that's not a good thing, right? So you can't do that, right? But yes, in the modern world, at least when I'm writing any code, we are building anything, there are two things that play around in my mind. So if I'm building something that I know is going to work as a backend, doesn't has to ship to as a plugin, I'm going to use the latest version of PHP, all the features, like the thing that I love about the new PHP is not just the speed, there's just-in-time compilation, all of that. The thing that I love most is the strict typing, which was missing previously. So now I can say this particular argument or variable is only going to be either string or an integer, nothing else, throw off at a letter if anything else, So maintaining code becomes very easy because everything is strictly typed, But so even in all the plugins that I write, still I use strict typing, but not at the level because again, as I said, right, I have to maintain 7.4. If I had to maintain 8.0, I could do way more. But I had to maintain 7.4. So I cannot do like string or this because that's not supported in 7.4. I can do string or if I know a particular variable can be multiple things, right? I just had to omit the strictness from that because I know 7.4 doesn't support that. So knowing all of this is the most important part. But yes, PHP, even I think one of our colleagues just ran test yesterday between 8.3 and 8.4, and it's like insanely fast. Insanely fast.
Yeah, I want to try it, but it's like, ugh, it's scary. Has to be a new.
I mean, if your code is PHP 8 running and fine in 8.3, I don't think it's going to break in 8.4. I mean, it would have broken in pretty much way earlier. Yeah.
Zero. Okay.
Yeah.
The last thing that I think it makes, at least it's a question that I always have, and that I guess a lot of people in the space are going to have as well, and companies particularly. So caching is great, right? We've talked a lot about caching and performance. And the thing is, you can cache a lot of things, especially if it's a regular, like even a news website, you cache everything and practically everyone gets the cache page. But then you get into, okay, so now I need logged in users. A lot of people have membership websites or e-commerce websites. And once you're logged in, then the whole story changes. Is there a way to optimize this such that, let's say, you're using WooCommerce, for example, or anything like that, such that most of the site really is the same. We don't want to change everything for the user. It's just that we need to know their account related things and whatever they have in their cart, right? That sort of stuff. But we still want the rest of the site to render as fast as before. Is there some sort of hybrid approach to caching where you can do something like that? Or is that in the WordPress space too complicated?
So, I mean, the question that you asked it's a very amazing question. When you are looking at a web page, you are looking at a web page from a user standpoint, right? Like a from a user. Now, take two steps back and look at that web page from a server or a computer standpoint, right? To them, it doesn't matter like what it is, right? Like the page might look visually same, but it's distinctly different, right? The body might have 5 extra classes when you are logged in. You don't know that. It doesn't make anything look change, but it's there, right? There could be some extra JavaScript, a script like in body script added in there. You can't see that changing anything visually, but it's there, right? Then there are like, let's say if you are a pro, let's say if you are a platinum member, you're supposed to see a banner with like a cap in your head of your image or something like that. But if you are like something like that, you might see like a button to upgrade, right? So if you forget about the front end, like how it looks, go to the view source, look at the view source, the code source, the HTML, and do a diff, like what it was for a logged in user versus what it is for 3 different logged in users. You would see that the diff is completely different for every single user. There could be nonce, that, it's different for user to user, right? So there are so many variables that are going on behind the scene. To a human eye, naked human eye, it might say, it's just like the card. It's just that. But no, just to take 2 steps back and look at the whole picture, then you will see, oh my God, so many things are different between each user. And then depending on how complex your system has, like as I was talking about, like you might have membership, you might have like add-on. Oh, you have purchased this. Now I want to give you this. Like so many variables coming into play, right? So at this point, what is basically caching? Understand what is caching? Caching means I don't want the origin server to execute the request. That's basically it. Right now, if I don't want the origin server to execute the request, and basically I have a copy of it. So like it's like having a Xerox paper, right? So like if you need an electricity bill and I have a PDF, I'm just instead of you going to the electricity company, I'm like saying, this is the PDF. Here you go. So that's basically reducing the like you talking to them, dropping an email, 10 emails between, and then you're getting the PDF. So I'm reducing that, right? But now for every single user, if the PDF is different, right? And like, you understand that what I'm saying, right? Like I cannot serve you the exact same thing. And at the same point in time, you cannot ask the server, just execute this bit of HTML and don't execute the rest, because it doesn't know that. Like you need to look at the life cycle. The request comes, it goes through the funnel, starts from the very top HTML and then the head and then the body and then just goes through the entire process, and then at the end just gives you that, right? And that's why you might see a lot of the times if a fatal error happens, like a part of the web page is shown and then boom, something went wrong, check your email. I don't know if you have seen that in WordPress. Like that's a pretty complicated. That means like the HTML was rendering, and suddenly the fatal error happens. So when it returned, it's like a broken HTML. Like some part was there, but the rest is just broken. So yeah, I mean that's basically
that's a great explanation. So it's not as easy as it would seem, because the whole page is drastically different between pages. So that you can do it.
What we tell the customer in scenarios like this is take a number, because you have Google Analytics, so you know exactly how many people are converting or purchasing or whatever, right? So think of it this way. In your head, create 2 buckets. One is the lookers, or they are basically coming to your website, reading blog articles, looking at the products, and they are not going to buy. For them, CDN is going to take care of that. So you don't have to worry about like the server resources of anything. But there are like the buyers. For them, make sure your server has ample amount of resource to accommodate your buyers. It's like when they come, your server is not overloaded, to accommodate the buyers. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. That's a great approach to handling. So whenever, a lot of times we see hosting and we'll look at their packages and it'll say something like for 100,000 visits or for whatever. But that's not really what people should be thinking of. They should have two buckets, right? It should be like, okay, maybe I have 1 million, but they're only lookers, like you said. But I have 5,000 that are constantly going in my membership. Okay, then I need to make sure that I can handle the 5,000. I know the other ones are going to be just fine.
So in that particular scenario, so let's say you have 1 million, but 100,000 of this are buyer, right? In that scenario, what you need to keep in mind is two things, right? Your server needs to have enough capacity to accommodate those 100,000 buyers, even in the repeat cases. So like, let's say, like in some day, some extra people came. And then for 2 days nobody came, right? Number one, that scenario. And number two is for the other 900,000 people, right? Like the rest of the people basically, right? The cache is going to take care of that until you click the purge everything button.
Right.
When you do that, you need to make sure that your server is capable enough to at least accommodate that uncached request until it gets cached again.
That makes sense. Especially if you're expecting a surge of traffic, right? So
surge is not a problem, right? If everything is cached, so you are here and then boom, like not a problem. It's fine,
But if you purge before a surge,
even if there is no surge, so let's say this is your request count and you are running on a server that is like very small, tiny server, which can accommodate like, let's say you get like 10, 20 buyers every day, and that's fine, you can accommodate that. But you have like a lot of lookers, right? And they're like going like that, and then one day you click purge everything, so everything is gone. So for a second or for a few seconds, it's like gonna go down like this, and for that time, it's gonna like the request is gonna come to the server to again everything gonna warm up and cache, and then it would go that. So for that period of time, the server is going to get overwhelmed with all those requests, right? So to make sure that the server can have that ability to handle that. Otherwise, the server is just gonna get overblown because it was not ready for that.
That makes sense. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So what do you think, or what would you recommend for agencies or companies that build WordPress sites to use for tooling, for example? Is there something to figure out? Because a lot of these cases, WordPress, I repeat this to a lot of people, WordPress is very fast. WordPress itself, everything you mentioned, all the line size, even with that, insanely fast. If you're not using a ton of plugins that are slow, it doesn't matter if you're using a ton of plugins. It matters if you're using a ton of plugins that are slow. And so, is there a relatively quick way or visual way that people can go into a site, they're building it, and then suddenly they feel it's a bit slow? Maybe they're using Query Monitor or something, and they see, oh wow, if I install this, is there a way to sort of see, okay, so this plugin is causing every page to be slower. Maybe I should look for an alternative or build that functionality into the site itself, right? What would one use for something like that if they don't have a team like yours access?
I honestly think there is no exact tool to give you that answer, right? Intuition plays a key role here, okay? And I'm telling you why, okay? So if you started with a website that is insanely fast, right? I'm hoping that you started with a very fast WordPress website, as you were saying, and you are building things. So when you are building things, you make some settings changes. You, as a logged in user, you open up the front end, click few places, you are looking how things are doing. So you have a very good understanding, like this much time it takes as a logged in user to navigate around the website, right? Suddenly, let's say you add plugin X, okay, and then you are doing the exact same thing, but now you should automatically feel like it's not that fast. It's like, is it slow? I mean, like if that question coming in the back of you, is it slow? Is that coming in? That means it's 100% slow, and that's the time for you to open up the network tab, refresh the page, look how much time it took to came the response or generate the response, whatever, just look, and then start disabling the latest plugins that you have added and see the differences. Because network tab will give you the actual number, right? But the intuition will give you it's like, I think something's not something is jiffy here, like something is not feeling right here. So that feeling is something that would come if you are interacting with that website every single day. You know exactly, this much time it would take. So sometimes it happens, like you haven't made any changes, you haven't do anything, but there was like some network delay or something. That's like rare scenarios, but 9 out of the 10 cases, like it's either you updated the plugin and that update has something in it, and something has happened, and after that you were feeling the slowness.
I see. That's a great suggestion. What I find myself doing is with the health and troubleshooting plugin that Core has.
Yes, yeah, that's an amazing plugin. Yeah,
I don't know why it has so bad reviews. I recently checked, but it's great. I mean,
it's not for average users.
It's not for average users, and they think they broke the site, but it's only for them. Yeah. So for those who don't know, that plugin is very nice because it allows you to specifically only enable one plugin. So, yes. But only for you who is looking at it. Yeah. And so you just click that and it will disable everything, even the theme. It will fall back to a base theme and just leave that plugin. And you can browse the site. Oh, it's working. Okay, now let me enable another plugin at the same time.
Yeah.
And then my theme.
Check. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you go one by one.
Just
and you're like,
one word of caution that do not use that help and troubleshoot plugin if there is a fatal error involved. Like let's say some plugin is giving you a fatal error. Do not use that, because imagine you enable a plugin and boom, you get a fatal error. Now there is no way for you to undo the go back from the help and troubleshoot to
right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, so just beside that, it's an amazing plugin.
Yeah. And you need to sort of know what you're doing, but it's very helpful in that scenario. Not for fatal errors, but for just for speed, performance, and you can very easily see like night and day difference. Just turn this off. Oh wow! Now it's loading in 0.2 seconds. Great. They turn it on, and now it's 1 second. What's going on? And now it's that plugin that's causing the issue. And maybe what I found, I don't know, Saumya, what you think of this, but I've found that sometimes a specific plugin will affect the site much more in one host than on another host. And it's so strange. I mean, probably the processing power or
absolutely
CPU. Clock speed or something, but I feel
a lot of things are involved. It's purely hardware. So like for example, a lot of the hosts where you can get cheap hosting, like everything has a dollar value, right? Like if you're getting something for cheap, that means something is happening, right? And what happens is they oversell their system. So if even we use virtualization, but like even that has to get limit, right? We never even come anywhere close to the limit to make sure that every one of our customers has breathing room, enough breathing room, not just like breathing room, enough breathing room, right? So, but what this companies does is they follow the approach of the airline companies, right? The airline companies oversell their seats, right? Hoping that some people won't show up, some people will get sick, and something. Exact same thing happened with these guys, right? They put a huge amount of people on a small server, so that what happens. And even that server hardware is not like bleeding edge or something like that. It's like, it's averagely good server, right? And then it's like over congested, right? Then on top of that, what kind of disk they're using? Like a lot of people say SSD, but at what extent? Are you using SSD? Like a lot of the hosting companies will give you NGINX reverse proxy caching. So they use SSD only at the caching layer, whereas at the all around the server, the actual server is on like normal old HDD. Okay, and it's very common, right? Or in some cases, the file server might be on HDD or something, or the database is in SSD or vice versa, something like that, right? So and then the networking, right? How many backbones do they have? How many alternative network do they have? Like if one is dropping, like if one is happening, like a lot of bad connection, is there a fallback to fall into? Like a lot of things come. Like what is their throughput level? Like a lot of these companies even have like limiting, like okay, like this cannot be more than this. Like even if you put a zip file in that server and try to download it, even if you have like a 1 Gbps connection, you might get like 200 kbps, 300 kbps, because they are literally restricting all of that, right? So like everything gets restricted, right? So that's why you see that night and day difference. So there is like the hardware, the network, the like what kind of a RAM, like what is this clock speed of the RAM, is it a ECC RAM, non-ECC RAM, like lots and lots of things, right? Like I can just go on for ages, like lots and lots of things. Right? So
It
yeah.
makes a lot of sense because when we think of buying hosting, we just, okay, yeah, SSD, performance, how many CPU, where? Sure. But think about it as I don't know, if you've ever been a gamer, or you're building a performance computer to video edit, you don't just buy RAM and just buy SSDs. You have to do your research and find out which SSDs, what speed, what RAM, what speed. And
Yeah,
even
but the
motherboard
average
effects,
Joe,
right? And
the
so-
average Joe won't understand that, right? The average person won't understand that. So for the average person, what I like to say is, if your website is just like a hobby, you don't care about your website, right? Like it's fine. Like if it's up, it's up. If it's down, it's down. It's not hurting you. Go with like whatever, choose whatever the cheapest that you can get, like maybe 50 cents, even free hosting. Doesn't matter, right? But if your website is earning bread for you, and like it's the bread earner for you, then think of your hosting, or like whatever company we're choosing, instead of like a hosting, think of it as like a investment on a mattress. Like let's say when you get a mattress, right? Like you are not just using it for a week. You are like properly looking into it, testing it, and then you would like it's like that, right? So it's not just, it's like, as I said, like because it's not just a hosting company. Hosting is just a part of it. We are a service and engineering company, right? So hosting is just something that we do, right? So the support, the hand holding, the knowledgeable team that you get is just unimaginable. Like for example, like BigScoots has so many things. Like I mean, it's funny. People are completely unaware of. So about BigScoots cache, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you do, right? And BigScoots Cache also comes with a lot of hooks, filters, the REST API that I just know about today. If you're interested, you can just let me know. I would literally give you the documentation link of the REST API so you can see the entire REST API, like how you want to make requests and all of that. But anyways, so that's the BigScoots Cache that you know, right? I think probably it's been about 2 months or something like that. We have released BigScoots Migrator. So which is something none of the people in the real world, like we are so, I mean, we didn't release it. By announce it. I don't want to say release it. We released it, but we didn't announce it publicly, like like a big drama or launch, like, oh, we are doing this, because it was there in the alpha beta stage for even longer than that. It was just being tested and stuff. But I think for past 1 month or so, it's been like fully the stable version. We are getting like around 98-99% success rate with the plugin. Okay, so the thing is, now that's where the dilemma comes, right? The average people that comes to BigScoots, they expect their migration to be taken care of by some expert person, right? And that is not a bad expectation. That's a great expectation, right? But that's again, so that's what I was talking to you about. Like, not one hat cannot fit everyone, or one shoe cannot fit everyone, right? The same thing when you look at it, right? As an agency owner, this is like so daunting to you. Oh my God, for every single migration, I have to talk to these guys, then they have to migrate it. And why can't I just do it myself?
Right.
I can then schedule it accordingly. Like I can talk to the client, plan it. Like, okay, I'm going to start it from this time, Saturday. Like I can do so many things, right? So now BigScoots Migrator is like an amazing, oh my God, like where it has been I've been looking for this for so long. So you can see the same thing has like two sides of coin, depending on whom you are asking and what is their experience level. Right. So BigScoots Migrator was built, like, despite, of all of that, it was built to be dead simple. Like, when you use it, you just go into your, BigScoots portal, you generate the migration key for the site. So let's say you have a website called example.com in some other host. Okay. And you want to add example.com in BigScoots. So you go to BigScoots, you click on add site as a new site, add example.com. It takes a few seconds to set everything up, right? when you haven't made any DNS changes or anything yet, right?
Okay.
So when everything is set up, right? So now example.com is part of your account, right?
Okay.
So now you get an option for BigScoots Migrator to migrate, right? So you click on that, a pop-up comes up, it gives you walk you through, okay, first you need to click download the plugin, install a plugin, going to the WP admin plugins, add new, install a plugin, download it. Now go to the next page. This is your migration key. Copy paste the migration key, start migration, boom, and everything else is taken care of.
Okay.
Right. So this is already being used by a lot of our enterprise customers who are, as I said, like you, they want control, right? But when we were internally talking about this, and as I said, it's been in release for months, right? We were always going this back and forth, if we do a press release of this, what if customer thinks, oh my God, so from now on, BigScoots are not going to take care of our migrations, we have to do it on our own. That is not the case, by the way. It's not going to happen, but it's only a matter of second between a good PR and a bad PR. Right. So it doesn't take a moment. Someone can just post something in some social media and just twist everything and takes a completely 180-degree turn, right? Which we don't want. Right. So despite it being there working flawlessly, right, it's just like that. So it's like that. But I would love you to use it. It's
I will definitely try it. That's great. And I understand the scenario perfectly because
and there is another thing. There's another thing that is coming into the pipeline, which something that I think that's something that we will do a PR because it's going to get on every single customer websites. It's basically called BigScoots Helper. Okay. So what that's going to do is we basically created, so we it's not something new. We always use this, but we use this as a MU plugins when customer wanted or something like that. But now we made them as modules, right? So there are different modules which you can enable from BigScoots portal as well as WP admin. So from both places, right? And now you have this. So let me give an example, right? So let's say you created example.com. Okay. And you want transactional emails to be sent that are properly authenticated, right? So we know that thing, you send an email, it goes to the spam box. You want that, right? And you also want an email activity log, which email are getting sent, right? So you click a button inside BigScoots portal, inside BigScoots portal, it would first you would obviously create an email ID, no reply at the rate of example, let's say for example, right?
Right.
Beside that, you click a button and it would just BigScoots Helper already there in your website, right? It would just enable that. It would just do all that thing behind the scene and enable that module. And boom, now you have fully authenticated SMTP transactional emails as well as email activity log. That log you can see in WP admin as well as in BigScoots portal.
Wow.
In both places, exact same log. And inside BigScoots portal, when you were seeing the log, right? Whatever time zone or time that you have selected, that you can go to WordPress settings and you can choose this is my time zone. This is the way I would like my time to be set. Some people use 24 hours, 12 hours, whatever. It would follow that and show you in your local time that, this time, this email was sent. This is the email body of that. It was sent to this person. And this is the debug log. And the debug log is basically a bunch of technical nonsense, the back and forth between the server and client. Server said this, client said this, server said this, client said. And if something went wrong and the mail wasn't sent, it was super helpful. You can just send that to us. We can dig deep and see what happened, what went wrong where.
Wow. That's great because typically you have to use another third-party plugin to do it, and it adds more stuff.
Nothing. And not only that, then there's coming user activity logs,
Nice.
So again, same thing. If you just enable user activity logs, it would be there in WP admin at the same point in BigScoots portal. The same data you would see in both places. So you can search and you can search the user activity log based on anything like username, IP, whatever. Right. And you can just search, paginate, whatever. You can, let's say there are 10 columns showing, you can go to the screen option, uncheck 3 columns that I don't want to see these 3 columns. Everything is up to you. And it would show you that, There is even an option which is disabled by default that is tracking the option data on change, right? Let's say if I make a change, this came out of necessity, right? So a lot of the times customers complain, okay, I haven't done this. Okay. So you guys must have been the one that have done this, and my site is broken, right? And it is impossible to track that, right? Like who did it, right? So when user activity log is will be deployed, which is like in the Q1 of 2025, we are going to do that. And that's like the plan, right? So what's going to happen is it's going to show that like let's say the plugin settings shows like some option changed by this user from this IP and that, right? And then if I enable the and by default we are not tracking what was the old value, what was the new value, because it's like going to increase the log data unnecessarily, and it's also for the privacy reasons.
Right.
Don't want to do that. But if some reasons it's like happening and we want to like nag that exactly what happened, we can turn that off. And now not only was seeing that the data was changed, you were also saying previously the data was this and now the data is this.
Guys.
So you can't put the blame on anyone.
Yeah, that's excellent. Because a lot of times it's not that they want to blame, but that they don't understand the thing that they did.
Exactly. I'm not blaming the customers. It's not their fault, right? Like they might, let's say for example, a customer is working with you for 7 years. They have such a trustworthy relationship with you, but they might be using us for 6 months, right? So if maybe you made a change that broke the site, but the customer's point of view, they thinking us is more likely, the mathematical probability is way higher than the finger pointing to you,
right?
Because they have been with you for so long. So we understand the complete mathematical thing behind it, but it's just what it is. But it's coming, right? So we are always building this things. So now with the BigScoots helper, there are 2 more amazing things that is coming, and this is all of this. Like we listen to our customers' problems and requests so deeply. Like everything at the engineering team is, I don't think I have worked on anything that is not driven by like actual data. Like it can be KPI, NPS, or customer satisfaction, or customer request, anything. Even if one customer is looking for it, then that's a requirement. I don't care. That's the mantra basically, So I remember a lot of our customers coming to us. So let's say they are coming from Squarespace or Wix or Blogspot, something like that, right? And they have the site, so they have a domain. So previously they have something like Blogspot, whatever, right? But they now have purchased the domain, but they don't have a website to show at this point, right? So they just want like coming soon, or let's say, for a lot of agencies like you, right, who are working behind the scenes, like let's say the helper page or something, right? Like you are adding the help and troubleshoot and doing things, but during the time you don't want any other user to visit the site. So you want like under maintenance page, right? So again, modules, Now you just enable a module, boom, have coming soon.
Yeah.
And that is just for the normal user, the logged in user, the WP admin request, the REST API request, admin.php, cron, they will all run perfectly. Just the normal users will see coming soon. At the same way, if you enable the maintenance page, it would show you we are working on something like that. It's like very simple 2 lines, So we didn't wanted to make sure to add a lot of text. Like initially, the design that I did, it had a lot of text. The team, like the entire team, gave a feedback, like just reduce the text. Like build another design that just had the least amount of text, because when you have a lot of text, customer will have requests to, like, can I change this text? Make it more personalized. So that part we wanted to remove, because I wanted it to be so general. Like we are under maintenance. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe they're just doing updates. You just want people to know they're doing updates. Don't.
Whatever. So So like let's say like you knowingly want the site to like show a maintenance page for let's say 15 minutes while you are doing something behind the scenes, because the design might break or something might happen, that, right? So just turn up that option on, boom, you have a maintenance page.
Wow,
do your work, clear your cache, turn it off, clear the cache, boom, you have it.
That's great. Is there a way to activate that? I'm sorry to throw this at you, but is there a way to activate that such that it also affects regular logged in users? I mean, not admins, of course, but
we can, but for now, I haven't received that request yet. For now, I am like just ignoring any logged in user.
Any
But
logged in user. That
going
makes sense for
forward,
most
but going forward, if the most customers says like, you know what, just allow admins, because again, my reasoning behind that was, I mean, okay, you were talking about admins. What if, in your case, you have a big organization, you also want editors to have access?
Yeah,
You also might have like a custom user role set up, and you want them to have access.
Their special
I
file.
can't just
Yeah.
go ahead and
Makes
do
sense.
that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason I did. Like, I did it for the logged in users. So, like, anyone who is logged in, they would not see this page, but anyone who is logged out, they would see it. And the benefit of the BigScoots helper is that, going forward, if we have to release a new module, all we need to do is the module just release that, make a release of BigScoots helper, boom, the module is everywhere. As simple as that. Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? We are always working so hard round the clock. Like users can't see that, but it's like happening. Like if you use BigScoots Migrator, you will know what I'm talking about. Like it's like I don't think you have ever used a migration system as intuitive and as simple as you literally don't have to do anything. Just paste the migration key. It will ask you, are you 100% sure you want to start? You say yes, sit back, relax, and sip from your coffee. And that's it.
Okay. Let me ask you a few things about that. So, so it will copy obviously the files, will copy the database, it will do the search and replace for you and leave everything as is. What happens with the domain itself? That last step. So at the very end, you need to.
So, like for example, can you give me an example? Like you are moving.
So let's say you have a website and you called let's see. So the website is going to be called puzzlejourney.com, right? And so you have this website and it's living on X
host,
right?
Whatever, X host.
It's there, and it does already. Maybe it already has Cloudflare, maybe it doesn't. But you have the domain somewhere. You have it here, and I want to migrate to BigScoots and make it as easy as possible. So I go into BigScoots, I add the domain as a new site, and it creates the empty site. It gives me the key. I go to this other site. I put the plugin in, do it start. It will move everything over, right? There's a couple of things that I typically ask. So the first, the first thing is, when it's doing that, is it showing? I should put in the other side in maintenance mode, so no new orders or things like that come through, right? That in some cases we don't need that. And then the other thing is the most important one. What about the domain, the DNS changes? At what point does it do that, or do we still do that part?
Great question. Amazing question. Okay. So when the migration is happening, right, during the migration period, you are not supposed to make any changes to the website. I mean, that's like a basic thing. Everyone knows that, right? But in terms of putting to the maintenance mode, no, BigScoots Migrator doesn't do that by itself because a lot of the customer might not even want that.
Yeah.
If you want that, you can just slap a maintenance plugin on the main side to show we are under maintenance. Then you start the migration, so it would migrate with the maintenance plugin.
Right.
And then if you are migrating it, that means like if you are initiating the migration, that means you are capable enough to handle your DNS, like changing the A record, like shifting from this IP to that IP. Because remember, when you added that example.com to BigScoots, right? It fetched the DNS and maintained the same DNS as it was before in the previous host, right?
Like, so it's just a matter of changing name servers.
No, just changing the record, literally the record. Like you like, let's say for example, take example of example.com, right? So when you create example.com, you add that to BigScoots, right? Let's say you add example.com to BigScoots. What it does is, behind the scene, it would create like a free Cloudflare account for you, and it would fetch all the DNS record from the old host and put it into the Cloudflare account, right? Now, if you are, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you have seen that step. During adding a website into BigScoots, it would ask you, do you have a Cloudflare account or not? Right. If you do, it asks you to provide you the details, because in that case, we would use your account to add the domain instead of, or use that domain if it's already there, or we would create a new Cloudflare account. Like if you already have a Cloudflare account, why just create a new one, right? So just provide the details, the API key, and we will just then use your account to maintain everything, right?
Okay.
So now for this particular example scenario, let's say you don't have the domain on Cloudflare. You are using GoDaddy DNS or something like that, right? So you add the domain in BigScoots, right? BigScoots fetch all the DNS records that are there. It create a free Cloudflare account, adds all the DNS record. By the way, all the DNS record, the A records and everything is pointing to your X host IP, because that's what is in GoDaddy, right? So it's pointing there. Then it gives you this is your new name servers, right? This is your Cloudflare name service, right? So even before starting the migration, what you're supposed to do is first you need to change the name servers to the Cloudflare. Because even after you've made the change to Cloudflare, nothing is going to change, because even Cloudflare, the IPs are still pointing to the X host, right? When that is done, when the name server change is done, then you start the migration. Boom, the migration done. Then you go to DNS. Now all you have to do is just change the A record and just change the IP from X to whatever BigScoots IP you have. So that's the expectation. If you are starting the migration, you have this basic knowledge of manipulating DNS or this. This is the basic expectation that we have. This is the basic part that you need to know.
So at the beginning, you first do what we typically do, which is first point the name servers, have everything as a copy. Now you have it here, but now it's connected.
Is it?
Okay. And then at the end, you just change the A record, the C name.
A record. Yeah, that's as simple as that. Yeah. Because, all the hard parts. So for example, if you have used other hosting platform, again, I'm trying not to take any names in this podcast. So other hosting platforms use their own approaches of WordPress, where you would see if you go to the root, if you literally just open up WordPress, right? So you have the actual structure of WordPress, like WP content and all that stuff, the actual structure. But on certain hosts, you would see that is completely destroyed, right? They have WordPress sitting in some locked-in directory, plugins in some other locked-in directory. I'm not going to take any names, but I'm pretty sure you know whom we are talking about.
Some siblings going on there.
Some siblings going on there, right? So, and in some cases, you can't even fetch the WordPress core because they have completely different user permissions and stuff. So you can't even touch that, right? So the plugin is doing everything. Everything. It's like fetching everything, doing everything, regenerating if needed, doing the WordPress thing, everything. It's doing everything. All you need to do is start, relax, take a coffee, watch Netflix, come back, change DNS, boom, and it's done. Maybe probably before changing DNS, use a host file local host file to use the IP to check everything is fine, and then just use the DNS key. As simple as that.
Nice. Well, I'm really looking forward to that part, the maintenance mode as well. And then the email stuff you said for authenticated email. So would that be with the person's existing third-party email service, or does BigScoots have an transactional email service?
BigScoots have their own email server that is free of cost for every single user, WP. So if you go into your WPO portal on the left-hand side, at the bottom left, you would see a section saying email. You can go there, you can create email IDs, So now obviously if you're using Google Mail or Google Workspace, then your AMX record are pointed to Google, so this is not going to work, right? But if you want to use BigScoots as your email provider, so let's say in your Outlook or Apple Mail or whatever, you create an email there and you just add all the SMTP and the IMAP details, and now boom, you have your email. Or use the web email. So we have RoundCloud. That is the web email interface.
Right.
You can use that, or you can use any local system, Thunderbird, Outlook.
For regular email as well for the account. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. And okay, so
but it is the only thing that is not supported is sending bulk marketing emails.
Broadcasts.
That is, that's
still want to use something else, right? Okay. Yeah. That's great to know. I mean, especially for smaller businesses that don't want to be paying for another third party.
Absolutely.
Keep everything there. That's great to know. A lot of hosts don't. So the very cheap hosts provide email, but then the good hosts, managed WordPress, don't offer it. And though it's good that you do.
It's a reason, guys. It's a painful thing to have another thing to worry about. But again, as I said, right, we are a customer obsessed service and engineering company. So for us, it's it's fine. Customer needed we're gonna do it. So it's just like that. But yeah.
Nice. That's good to hear. So one last thing on that is so if a WordPress site is set up, basic WordPress is a new site on BigScoots, and it sends outbound email because, I don't know, login, password resets, new account, that sort of stuff.
Transactional emails.
Yeah, that's automatically, that just works through PHP mail out through BigScoots. Do they have to configure anything?
If you set so basically let me give you an example again. So example.com, right? Let me walk you through all the possible scenarios. You own example.com. Okay. So at this point, there are two possible scenarios. Either you already have a different email host like Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 or something like that. Right. So in that scenario, you would have your MX record set up pointing to them. In that case, BigScoots is not coming into the picture, right? Because your email is taken care of by Google or Microsoft or whoever you were paying for your email, right? So that's one part. Now, another part of the story is you bought the domain, but you do not have any email service. You're just looking for an email service. You go into BigScoots portal, go to the email section. There you would see that there are a literal section, like you just one click, it would set up all the MX and SPF, DKIM, everything for you because it has the DNS record and everything. So it would set it up. Now you're good to go create all the email IDs that you want. So again, let's say, for example, you want to create hello@example.com and no reply@example.com. Right? So hello @ is for your personal one, like you want to interact with people, and no reply one is for the transactional one, right? Beside each email ID, you would see a button and a text that would say, use this as my SMTP email ID. Beside hello and beside no reply. So now it's up to you to choose, like I want to use no reply as my transactional email. So you click on that button, boom, behind the scene, everything happens, everything's done. And from there on out, it's just any email in transactional email is going properly
authenticated
and authenticated and signed. Yeah.
Nice. That's great. Especially for, like I said, smaller businesses or hobby sites. That's excellent.
No, I think it is great for big sites as well. I mean, it depends, right? Like we have seen people, even big sites using it. Like they have like some email set up, right? And they can just use like they are well equipped with like Outlook or Microsoft Apple Mail or something like that. And they are knowledgeable enough to set up SMTP IMAP and things like that. So it's fine for them, so yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, because typically one of the main steps we do is set up an SMTP provider.
Yes, right? Yeah.
And then use a plugin or code in wconfig to have that the email being sent through that, right? And then sort of don't use PHP mail. Yeah. But knowing this, it's good. Good. So a lot of customers don't want to have another.
Yeah, and another amazing part of BigScoots Helper is that it is insanely compliant with WordPress multi-site. I personally don't like multi-site, but still there are a huge audience of multi-site, and I highly respect them. It's just personally, I just feel like multi-site is just like when it's just gets harder and harder to scale up compared to having separate site. Like it's separate sites, but it's just like as you grow, like you have but for some businesses where they just have like landing pages for customers, obviously, absolutely, like multi-site is makes sense. But here is the kicker, right? So for the BigScoots Helper, when it is installed and enabled, let's say network activated it, right? What's going to happen is for every single site, by default, every module is deactivated, right? So you could want to have the SMTP module enabled for one site ID, the user activity log enabled for another site, the coming soon for another site, and under maintenance for another site, and all of them will work separately. Nice. So yeah,
that's great. That's great that you thought of that because I imagine there's a ton of multi-site owners that would love that feature.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the thing, like coming back to the beginning, right? So again, like what makes you truly engineer is like foreseeing this, like seeing the complexity and then building the system from when you were building from the starting to make sure that it can handle that, right? Like the code itself, is not the bigger challenge here, you know. So like seeing that, designing that, architecting that, and envisioning that, and making sure everything works, you know, like in a beautiful way at scale. That's the hardest part, you know, where I mean, I don't know. I don't have much trust in LLM in that part. I mean, it just requires so many variables, right? Like coding, like when you think from this perspective, coding becomes like 100 times easier to you, right? Like coding is like child's play. Like when you start thinking from here, right? Because this is where you are actually doing all the brain work. Like think, oh my God, if I make this change, it will work. But then when I add 10 more to this, it will like, you know, pile up and it would become like this, you know, like think 10 years down the road, you know? So yeah, that's where
This is
craziness.
fantastic. And Saumya, I really appreciate you coming on because you've given us so many golden nuggets of both tips for even plugin developers and theme developers,
Yeah.
as well as site owners and people looking for hosting companies, what to look for.
Yeah.
It's just been great. I'm sure we're going to be able to pull out a bunch of little snippets as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Post individually for people so they can see and coach you on that because some of these suggestions are great. And also, the insights that you provided are there's a lot of things that I learned, and I have to go through the video again just to learn some of it, even more slowly. But I really, really appreciate your time, Saumya.
Yeah,
Is
I mean,
there
any theme and plugin developer who is probably watching this, you know, going forward, I would just have one request for you if you're watching this. Like I'm literally requesting you, please give performance the utmost priority, even on top of your, you know, like the plugin functionality. Like if bringing one functionality hurts performance, don't do it. Just don't. It doesn't worth it. Trust me.
Thank you, Saumya. That's great advice. I really appreciate that. You heard it directly from Saumya. He's the expert. And again, really, really grateful that you were able to come. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can follow us here. If you're watching this on Spotify, then subscribe to the podcast as well. And I look forward to talking to you, Saumya, again at some point.
Absolutely.
It was a really nice conversation. And
Same here.
thank you, everyone.